You're listening to Breaking New Ground. In this podcast, we provide thought-provoking conversations for those looking to begin or advance their entrepreneurial real estate goals.
Together, we'll venture into the world of commercial real estate with entrepreneurs who challenge the status quo, building innovative paths with bold approaches.
We're your hosts. I'm John Pugh, a real estate developer and investor.
And I'm Rachel Walters, a real estate marketing expert. Throughout our episodes, we'll bring in real estate trailblazers, creating a space for inspiring conversations surrounding commercial real estate.
Pugh Management is proud to sponsor the podcast Breaking New Ground. Pugh Management is a premier developer for mixed-use, multifamily, and industrial properties. We love to develop places to live, work, and play. Pugh Management partners with family offices and institutional investors on projects in New England and Central Florida. Check us out online at pughmgmt.com. Hey everyone, it's my pleasure to introduce a truly inspiring professional whose career is a testament to the powerful intersection of art and business. With over a decade of experience, Killian Repasky has become a driving force in the art world, combining a passion for fine art with a sharp acumen for business and technology. Killian excels in fine art sales, business development, and logistics, while also serving as a trusted consultant and champion for mid-career artists. Her commitment to connecting people with art and supporting artists and organizations in achieving their visions has left a lasting impact on the industry. Today, Killian will share her insights and expertise, offering a fresh perspective on the integration of fine art into real estate projects. Welcome to the pod, Killian.
Thank you, John. The kindest introduction I've ever had.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here.
Thanks,
so glad.
We're really excited. As a marketing professional, having to try to sell art and why it's important is very hard. And so to hear it from the expert is going to be amazing. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having
me. Yeah. So on that, let's talk about why. Why is art an important part of a real estate project, and where does it kind of fit in? Where have you seen it be particularly effective as a way to create a benefit for the community and for the investors?
Yeah, absolutely. It's an incredible ripple effect that art can have on a community. And the start of that, the source of that, is with a lot of these property developments and their effort to introduce art into their communities. The way that a real estate development project interacts with the artists, either in their community or globally, can really bring a new and fresh audience to their space. And that can be anything from a shopping mall to a residential development. I've worked with artists who have placed artwork on every floor of a new condo building, or creating massive installations for a public space. The effect and impact of having an artwork associated with a property, number one, it brings a cultural and even potentially historical relevancy to a property.
Sure.
You can just be another condo building, or you can be a space that allowed a contemporary artist that's blowing up in the world, say Rashid Johnson, Rhonda None, Daniel Popper, placing artworks like that into a property, bringing a fresh new audience into a space. There's a ripple effect to that that can create a longevity of success for a property.
Yeah. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I think to that point, I think it's a great one. It's an integral part of placemaking, right? I mean, when you want to create a memorable place that is something that's beyond the ordinary, you introduce something that's extraordinary, like fine art, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, there's a lot of different layers to introducing fine art to a property. You see it in the building of sculpture gardens to create a public art space for people to enjoy. You also see it in lobbies. You see it in boutique hotels. There are some incredible hotels around the world that are focused on bringing fine art to their spaces. And that has become a draw. You see this especially in Europe when there's different art fairs or biennales that people travel from all over the world to see. And they want to enjoy art in every aspect of these trips. A lot of people will travel to buy their art. Say you're attending an art fair and you're hoping to acquire some work. One of the biggest draws for people is that experience of different types of work, whether that's through where they live or where they're vacationing. If you're staying at a hotel or you're living in a condo building or apartment building that has integrated art into its space, it's right there in front of your face and you can't ignore it. And I think that's an incredible experience. It's just a baseline human experience. To paraphrase the great Tracy Amen, fine art itself is the only thing that is truly still itself, and that is its value. And that is where someone like me comes in to help bring this artwork, these incredible artists to the public space. And oftentimes the way to do that in the most effective way possible, to the largest audience possible, is working with corporations, real estate companies, investors, the people who can afford to bring these incredibly large installations or impactful collections to the public eye. And the reason that people hire someone like me is because that translation between business speak and the ultimate goals of a business, oftentimes can't translate to the goals of an artist or the success of an artist. The language is different. The experience is different. So being able to walk that fine line, speak the language of the artist, make sure that the artist's vision is being respected, and really letting them create their art without getting caught up in the business side of things, is what I do best.
I think, it's funny. I had a recent trip to Manhattan, and I was staying in Midtown. I spent a lot of time in Midtown, and I had lived and worked there at one point, and it just reminded me of how so many of the great spaces in New York City and Manhattan are influenced by the fact that there's this great public art, right, in some of the different courtyards and areas of public spaces that otherwise it would just be a canyon, right, of concrete and metal. And as much as I'm an architect, I love buildings. I think, having that experience kind of on the ground level, kind of this one-to-one experience with that art is something you don't find in a spreadsheet, right? Developers will choose to introduce fine art for very specific reasons. A lot of it has to do with the placemaking element, which I've been involved with in Boston. But then there's also sometimes, I believe there's a part of it's a negotiation with the city or the local group that wants that sort of thing introduced. So have you seen those types of conversations or been a part of those? I'm kind of curious kind of what that looks like.
Definitely. It's one of the most common conversations that I end up in. A lot of times the property will begin the process of building or designing, and they say, we want art. Don't really know how to go about that. One of the most popular spaces to go out and find art is sites like CodaWorks, where you can request qualifications or proposals from artists or their representation. And that conversation oftentimes starts to devolve when all of the logistics and things like permits and budgets and what have you start swirling around. And art tends to be the first thing that falls off the list. If you're going down the list of things that you absolutely can't live without as a business and as a project, a lot of times art falls off that list first, because I think that's just a core misunderstanding of how art can benefit a property, not just culturally, but financially. The amount of visitors that will come to a public space because of a piece of art. Social media is such a big part of this ripple effect. And I think it's the reason that my profession has such staying power and has seen such growth over the last handful of years, is because there is a better understanding of how art integrates into the human experience. see people posting pictures of themselves with the piece of art that they went to see when they went to Nashville. And then what do after they go see that installation? They go to the closest place to get lunch, or they're staying at that hotel. And so being able to translate that into business speak, and being able to say, no, there's a real financial benefit to you having this piece of art and engaging with your community. Being able to translate that into business speak is where a lot of those conversations could potentially devolve. And it's really hard to keep them on the rails. But that translation is so important.
As a marketing professional, it is, I found, very hard a lot of times. Even a lot of marketing doesn't have a very clear ROI. And so a lot of times I am, a person sticking up for innovation or public art. It's something that doesn't have a clear ROI. And it's a lot of times it's also can be subjective. I know picking a name for a building has to be one of the worst exercises. So as someone who would want to hire you, do you get to be then the person, like you said, that's, doing the standing up and the ROI fee? Who usually hires you to do that for them? Because I know it is a very tough position. And do you have any secrets or, like you said, the keywords? Social media definitely has helped completely, using the word Instagrammable, occupancy checks and understanding how many people are viewing and digital numbers. But anything that I think our entire audience who are entrepreneurs would love to hear, some of the things that you're using to work through this.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm hired from kind of both sides of the business. I have artists that hire me to either help smooth out a conversation. Maybe a project has started and things have already gone off the rails, and they need someone to essentially bring it back onto the rails so that they can focus on the art, and I can help keep the business on track. And then vice versa, I'll be hired from the business side and given an objective. This is the project that we're working on, and we're looking for art, whether that be sculpture, painting, digital art. It all depends on what the project is. But really what I'm doing is creating a layer of professionalism between the artist and the rest of the world. And, there's a really fine line between, commission and creative direction. And, a lot of incredible art and graphics are made in an agency side of things. And I think that's where a lot of the art or creative endeavors have started to lean, is into that creative agency space, because that's what business knows. That's how people know how to bring creative assets into the business space. So I really, when it comes to the business side of things, I focus on the facts. What space are we working with? Who is your target audience? What is your budget? What is your timeline? And then I compile a list of options. And from those options, I always cater it to whoever I'm speaking to. If there's a property that wants to bring more foot traffic because they're a public space and they want people to engage with the restaurants or the shopping or what have you, then I'll focus on the foot traffic. Like I said, with Yugo Randonone, there were 2 million people over a period of 2 years that went to go visit that installation. So speaking to those facts and those numbers of past projects from artists, it's something that a lot of artists aren't comfortable speaking to, all of the saleability aspects of their art. So that is where that layer of professionalism really comes in, is being able to speak both languages. And then once a business or a property or a project is kind of reined in, and we know what the rails are, we know what the constraints are, we know what the financial aspects are, then I can take that to the creative that we're working with and speak their language. And as long as I know the parameters within we're working within, then I can speak to the artist at their level and help them create an incredible piece of art, all the way from commission to installation.
So that was my next question: is majority of the work that's produced that you're involved with, kind of managing, is it commission based, or is there are there some aspects where, hey, there's a specific type of art, a specific type of artist, a specific type of art that's necessary for this type of space, and you go and you already have some artists in mind, you go kind of find and assemble that and then deliver that? Like what is it? What do you see more of, I guess, is the question.
I think there's such a balance there because every project is so unique that if I can find a piece of art that's already been created that can be placed in a space, that's ideal.
Challenging, or is that it's kind of easier?
Not necessarily. It's not easier or harder. It just depends on who you're working with. I have a roster of artists, people that I trust, that are professional, that have done incredible work with me in the past, and I will always go to them first, right? The artists that I know that are just incredible artists and really good at what they do, and have a great track record that I can speak to. So I always start there. If it's a client saying, I want a large sculpture, very rarely is there a large sculpture that already exists that doesn't need to be commissioned, that's site specific. So for those site specific installations, always a commission, 100%. But if it's, say, a boutique hotel that's coming to me and says, we want a piece for our lobby, maybe it's a large painting, maybe it's a sculpture, maybe it's something digital that is being projected onto a wall, that is a loop of digital content, right? Whatever that may be, if there is a piece that's already been created, I will go find it. If I have an artist that I know, that piece would be perfect, then that's always going to be the best option outside of commissioning. Like I said, commissioning can often wander over into creative direction. And that's really not the point. You want to work with an artist for their art. Because every artist is unique, and trying to place them in a box and point them in a direction and say, you absolutely must do what I'm telling you to do. It's a really hard space to be in. It's hard for the artist, and it's hard for me because that creativity can get squashed. And, when you're working with these incredibly experienced contemporary artists, you want them to do their work because that's why people love them. That's why they're a successful artist. So I consider it my responsibility to always put the art first, and find the best piece of art for the space, regardless of what that creative direction may have been in the beginning. It's a collaborative experience, top to bottom.
Interesting.
I'm sure, as you guys know, things go wrong. Every day of the week, something's going to go wrong. Bad weather can ruin, any sort of construction or installation. An artist has a bad day and breaks their finger and they can't work for 6 months or what have you, right?
That was my nice question, is kind of the commission process. I can imagine that being challenging to manage. Obviously, you have because you have existing relationships with artists, you have a better means of managing those people, those specific people, better than necessarily a project manager from a random development or real estate company. I could see that being super challenging. Can we pull up? I wanted to share a couple of the images that you had shared, because I think that's interesting to be able to speak to that a little bit based on what we're talking about. Let's
start with Thrive in Fort Lauderdale.
Okay, great.
Because that's in such a beautiful area, very high traffic. It's under a bridge, and it was installed in 2020. And the artist is Daniel Popper. He does these massive sculptures, beautiful installations, and a lot of if you go to music festivals, he has a piece in Tulum. He also has pieces in different public spaces all over the world. So when this was installed, this particular piece actually got a lot of pushback from the community, but has seen kind of a turnaround in the last handful of years of visitation to this space. And then, of course, engagement in the community because of that visitation. You're staying in the area. It's Miami, Fort Lauderdale area, very popular travel destination. That area specifically, I've gone to visit this sculpture, and there's so much to do. So you may, as an art enthusiast, have gone to see Thrive and to take a picture, in the chest of this beautiful woman, and then you look around, you go, cool, I'm hungry, and you go and engage in the space, right? You go, cool, let's grab some lunch, let's grab a drink, walk around, let's go for a walk. And, you may have come for the art, but you stayed for the community.
Yeah,
And you
I live in Fort Lauderdale, and everybody knows this. It's definitely super iconic. Like, I'm super happy to be connected to you, someone who brought this. I mean, yeah, the restaurant across the street does so many things with the, around that, the multifamily building that is right under. Also, I've seen yoga there. Like, so talk about placemaking and community.
Yeah. Now, I can't take credit for this. I started doing some work with Daniel Popper long after this was installed. But it's just such an incredible example of his work and an incredible example of how artwork can integrate within a community and bring foot traffic to an area that maybe didn't seem obvious prior to that.
Yeah. That's a great point.
Let's look at the Yuga Rondinone installation. And I just love his pieces. He's got one of these rock stacks outside of the Bass Museum in Miami as well. Just, these are fantastic. I love these. 2 million people over 2 years came to see these. And this is in the middle of the desert, you guys. People had to get in a car and drive to go see these. This wasn't by an airport. This isn't something that you could just saunter over and take a selfie with. You had to really actively go seek out these works. And that is such a beautiful example of humanity to me. I mean, it really is my favorite. Anytime I see a large installation like this, that people go out of their way to experience, it really is the whole reason that I do this.
Yeah, I mean, I love landscape sculpture that's in the landscape like this. I think it's really beautiful. Does his work generally reflect this type of style or approach, or is this a very unique kind of project for him?
No, so he's got a stack of these rocks installed outside of the Bass Museum in Miami.
Okay.
And he's actually a pretty prolific artist, and he's done a lot of different types of works. So if you follow him on Instagram, he's got these great poems and pencil drawings. I believe they could be pencil or pen. Not sure about through Instagram. You can never tell. I also saw an exhibition of his work where they were molds of the corners of buildings, historic buildings in New York. And he had created these molds and used cinnamon or some other spices in the clay that he used to create these molds. So, with an artist like him, you're seeing these bright colors, you're seeing every sense being utilized.
Cool.
As a consumer of the artwork, right? When you walked into this gallery, when he did the molds, you could just smell just the physicality of his work. And every artist has a different practice, right? Every artist has something that engages their audience.
2 million visitors, huh? That's pretty cool.
Yeah, 2 million.
This is going to sound ridiculous, but I played a game over the holidays, and the family, and the game was who could stack the most marshmallows in 1 minute. And I did not win the game by any means. And this kind of reminds me of that game. It's playful and fun, and I love the color. The color, it's so clearly not natural, but it is natural in the landscape. And
in this natural landscape too, it's just
exactly.
Yep.
Cool. All right, let's look at the next one here. Let's see.
The Sculpture Garden in Seattle. Oh man.
This is not the Allen Institute one that you talked about.
Still a fabulous example of a successful sculpture park. Now, I grew up in Seattle, so this sculpture park has a very close part of my heart. I absolutely love this space. I lived just a block away from here for a long time, and watching the different artists and artworks being installed in this sculpture garden, it brings so much foot traffic and so much engagement in the community. And this particular sculpture park, I'm sure you're familiar with the Allen Institute and the way that Paul Allen was engaged in the art world. He's someone that really brought this idea of fine art in a community, on a property as part of business, and also fine art as an asset for his business. His auction of his collection after he passed was, one of the most watched auctions I think it had so much attention, and his collection was absolutely incredible. And he really introduced some incredible integration of art into the city of Seattle as he grew his art collection over the years. He also had a huge part in the Seattle Art Fair and bringing engagement into those spaces. So, all right.
Interesting. I don't think I realized he played that role. That's really cool.
He was an incredible proponent for art. He used to walk people into the art fair and go, buy something, find something, go engage with these incredible artists and find something. And Seattle has such a unique landscape of art, very different from anywhere else I've experienced. Now, I'm here in Brooklyn, so, the New York art scene and the Seattle art scene, very different. But Seattle has a great example of fine art placed in public spaces and also in professional ones. You walk into the lobby of almost any Amazon building in Seattle and you'll see an electric coffin piece or, a Jean Plensa outside of the Allen Institute. These really incredible artists being engaged by these organizations. And, honestly, just seeing these artists get paid. That's another part of the experience of being an artist. And one of the reasons I love doing what I do is because a lot of times artists struggle to ask for what they deserve.
Yeah.
Incredibly talented, but they're doing what they love. And that can get lost in the shuffle. And artists can really be taken advantage of through that process.
Killian, listening to how passionate you are is really endearing.
It's inspiring, yeah, absolutely.
And, I think you build these two qualities as an entrepreneur. One is trust, which is going to be huge for business people. And like you said, for the artists also, but also that you're passionate about this. And, even though tech is very different, like that's what you want in a founder. And I just want to say, like, hearing you talk about and get excited about these pieces is amazing. And I do want to hear now what John had asked.
Yeah. The question was just kind of what do you love the most about the process? Because you and I have talked about art before and buying art, and you really do a great job of keeping in touch with these artists. And just curious, like, where do you get the most pleasure in the process?
Oh, my favorite part is finding an artist and realizing that their work will be a perfect fit for whatever project it may be, and then going to their studio. Being in an artist's studio, in their space, seeing their practice live right in front of you where a piece of art begins, it's just so inspiring. And I probably sound so cheesy in saying that, but I just love it. I love it so much. It is my absolute favorite. And I think I've been able to build some incredible relationships because I'm always willing to meet the artist where they're at.
Sure.
You can't push a creative into a space where they don't feel like they trust the people in the room or that their artwork or their process needs to be defended or whether or not it's going to be respected, how they get to their end result. A lot of times the companies or the properties that want to install a piece of art, right? That's not the top of their list. There is a financial goal at the end of their yellow brick road.
Yeah.
And it can be incredibly difficult for an artist to sit in a room and have that be the focus.
Sure.
So
I can imagine. I mean, I've been in rooms before where you're planning a large project, and I remember there was a project I worked on. It was a particularly large project, and there was this very long spreadsheet with all the things we needed to manage. And one of the things on there was art selection. What are we going to install in this large public space? And I kind of inquired about it. It was early in the process. I inquired about, hey, maybe that's something I can help out with, kind of figuring that part out. And they're like, oh, we're not going to deal with that for, that doesn't matter. Basically, that's what they said. That didn't matter. And I was like, wow, to me, it kind of does matter. It matters a lot. And, but that specific project manager was speaking very specifically to this the total project value was hundreds of millions of dollars. And this was talking about, it's $200,000, right? Or whatever. It was an extremely small sum. And when you look at a project, 100% on, the dollars and cents, which you have to as a practical person managing a project.
Yeah.
But a lot of, and I think that's where the devaluation of some of this comes. And part of it is people that don't appreciate fine art. Part of it is solely being stuck in the day-to-day on managing the dollars and cents. And then part of it is what you just said, which is we're sitting in a room with an artist. They want to talk about their practice and what they care about and what they're trying to communicate to the world. And you're sitting there with a person who's like, okay, this is I got $200,000 in my budget here.
Yep. I just want to check the list.
Check the box, whatever, and so I think I can imagine that being a challenging position to be in for you. But I also understand I'm sure you're very good at it, like Rachel just said, because you're passionate about the art, but you can also speak to the business piece, which is very, in my mind, in my experience, uncommon. The other thing that I've noticed about you in terms of our conversations is how excited you are about the process of creation and the materials that are used. And maybe you could speak a little bit of that to that, because I think, some of the statues that we just looked at, two of them were stone and one of them was maybe metal. I don't know, but there's a lot that goes into that process. There's kind of a time period. And how do you figure out, like, for example, I don't know, if you were going to work with Popper on the creation of a statue, a sculpture, how do you understand, okay, this is I don't know, let's say it's a 15-foot high by 10 feet wide. Like, how do you figure out the logistics for something like that? Not only the logistics physically, but also the timeline, like managing that timeline. I'm kind of curious to hear about that process.
Well, you have to take it kind of like a Tootsie Pop, right? Just one lick at a time. I don't know if that was the best.
How do you eat an elephant? That's the old saying, right? One bite at a time, something like that, right?
But, you are working backwards from the project timeline. You have to keep in mind when, the property needs to open, and you're working backwards from that. But then also what materials are being sourced for this artwork. Is the artwork going to be placed? All of those nitty-gritty details are really important. But a lot of times are ever in flux. We can think that, okay, we're going to put this sculpture in this courtyard, right? There's a lot of logistics that you have to consider when there's foot traffic around a piece of art. Is this piece of art going to be outside? Yes, great. That means that there are certain materials you have to consider. And then you have to consider how long it takes. If this is a commission, brand new, you have to consider the process of the artist, right? So you've reached out to a sculptor. You say, I want to work with you. I love your artwork. I want a piece for my property. Unless there's a piece in that artist's warehouse already, and you can't say, oh, I want that one, right? If that isn't an option, then you have to work with that artist from the inception of this project. So that means a lot of back and forth in different drawings, different mock-ups, and the sizing of a space, the walkability of a space, how do you want people to interact with that sculpture, are all incredibly important aspects. So there is going to be a lot of back and forth in those drawings initially, in the measurements of a space.
Yeah, just bringing this up as an example, but when we were looking at this from a different angle, from further away, it looks like one giant piece of sculpture. Clearly, it's not. You can see the bands kind of going across it there. But maybe, and I know you didn't necessarily work on the installation of this one, but maybe speak to how would this type of thing be installed? Like, what would be some of the basic things you'd have to think about with that logistics?
Well, you would have to start with the available permits for the area. Right? This is directly on the water. So they very well could have, now, again, I have no idea how this was installed.
Sure.
But depending on the materials, you have to consider that, is there a bridge that you have to go in under with those materials? How is this being stacked if it was done in those, bands and those rings, and then stacked on top of one another. Very likely could have had a stabilizing factor in the middle, some sort of like steel rod or what have
Sure.
you to hold it in place. So that would have to be installed first. How heavy and tall is the piece? How far do you have to drill into the ground in order to maintain stability? And then the machinery and the labor needed for this. One person cannot install something like this. So it's not just the artist. The artist may have a large team. I've worked with artists that have a studio team of 10 or 15, and they have the guy who works the hand truck, the guy who works the crane, the guy who does the gluing or what have you, right? They have their process. And then you may work with an artist who doesn't have any of that. They just work with whoever is in the area in which they're working. So in that case, someone like me would go out and find the art handlers and installers for a piece like this. And then you just take it one step at a time, one permit at a time, and you address any issues that may come up, because there always are issues, one step at a time. So you would start with the permits, and you would start with the weight and height of the piece that's been marked up, and then you take it from there.
Cool. Interesting.
Yeah.
That's great. And then I think the other thing I wanted to touch on before we kind of wrap up is just like, I think the placemaking piece is such an important part. And maybe if you could speak a little bit to the cultural, like one of the things that I always think of whenever I think of like placemaking, I don't know if you've spent much time. Have you spent much time in Rome before?
No, very little. I've only been a couple times.
Okay. Let me just share my screen. So this is like my favorite place in Rome, and it's the Piazza Navona, which is very well known. It's not, it's nothing that's like groundbreaking, but the interesting thing, the thing that's so great about it is it's the scale of the place, right? It's this place that has sculpture, it has beautiful architecture, it has a variety of things that have been integrated. But the biggest piece that really, in my mind, that makes this space like beautiful is it is the sculpture, right? And the fountains as well. And I feel like when we introduce public art in places like 6th Avenue in Manhattan, right? That's the Hilton there. There's the UBS there. I worked, as my first job was working at the UBS on 6th Avenue. And there's always some beautiful artwork in front of there. There's a sculpture as well. It is, in my mind, it's an attempt to recreate this type of experience. And obviously it's not a one-to-one thing, but I think it's an interesting kind of as a reference. How much do you maybe speak a little bit to the placemaking, and are there certain groups that specifically do placemaking that you interact with and then are brought in via them, or is it always kind of a direct relationship with the owner? I'm kind of curious what your experience and your expectations are kind of going forward.
I do expect there to be a more direct interaction between the owners of a property and the integration of art, because I think there's a better understanding of art as an asset for either an individual or an organization, and being more closely involved with the selection and installation of that art. I anticipate that to grow substantially. In the past, now for something like this, obviously there are going to be, municipalities and cultural boards and
exactly.
all.
I mean, a lot of the groups that commission these types of things are institutional, right? They're not all private developers.
Exactly. And now I've never worked with a museum or university to place artwork. I've only ever done private, either individual or corporate placements. Or community placements, right? So from that standpoint, I do anticipate there to be a lot more attention paid to art in the next handful of years from individuals. From a cultural standpoint, I think the High Line is a really good example of that blend of contemporary fine art and a city or tourism board, right? That's probably involved. And then also, corporations and organizations that are involved in whether that be donations of artwork from their corporate collections or sponsorship of an artist to place an artwork on the Highline, right? To be able to see the name of your organization literally etched in stone next to a piece that is being seen by millions of people, the impact, the ripple effect of that for an organization is immeasurable. That you're literally in the history books for that.
Yeah.
I think we're going to be seeing a lot more participation and integration from the individual level as well as from the organizational level. I think people are just more engaged. There's more visibility into the art world now. I think there's very slowly but surely more accessibility. I think the art world has been this very selective club for a really, really long time. Yeah. And with social media being what it is now, how it's evolved and grown over the last 10 years has given people an opportunity to engage with artists and the art world in a way that just didn't exist in generations prior. And I'm excited to see what happens next. A lot of the artists I work with have these incredible social media presences. Just seeing from the studio, going to the studio, seeing the artwork being made, to it being placed in a gallery or a lobby or what have you, to the process being posted on Instagram, and seeing how the visibility of artwork is just exponential. It's amazing. There's an artist who she makes these great little prints, and I have a bunch of them. I actually gave them, there's one right here. I gave them away for little stocking stuffers. They're $1 or $2 a piece, and they're just so creative and charming. And she places these vending machines in different areas. One of them recently was in Grand Central, and it went viral. And there was a line around the block. Now everywhere you can find one of these vending machines.
Cool.
Just sell out like crazy, and only because of one post on TikTok. And now is so well known.
That's awesome.
It's moments, right?
It's so interesting. And like one of the things that we're getting to wrap up in a second, but one of the things that as an architect, I thought was really interesting. This is a while back now. Frank Gehry and the Bilbao effect, right? He created the Bilbao Art Museum, designed it in Spain. And after that, he got all these commissions because it literally put Bilbao on the map. It was, there was no reason to go to Bilbao, but now you had to go it was on the list of places to visit. And I feel like really great art installations kind of really have that effect as well, which has been fun to discuss with you today. So thank you for joining us. Would love to be able to connect the audience with you, and where should they look for you online or on the social media?
Yeah, absolutely. My company is called Fresh Kills Fine Art. And that was the name of that company came from kind of a funny story of a nickname. People used to call me Kills. But no, you can find me at my website, freshkillsfineart.com. And you can reach out directly to me on LinkedIn. And I take projects as I see them come. So really, to the audience, anyone who's interested in commissioning fine art, placing fine art, whether that's in your home, in your office, if you want to build a sculpture park or a new foundation, whatever it is that you're doing, please reach out because every project I do is unique, and I'm always looking for new opportunities.
Exciting. Well, that's great. Yeah. So we'll make sure to include all that in our show notes. And thanks for being here. Really enjoyed it.
So much.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
We want to hear your thoughts and feedback on today's episode and what topics you would like us to discuss in future episodes.
Follow us on Spotify to be notified when our next episode is live. To connect with John and I, follow us on LinkedIn.
Thanks for joining us today on Breaking New Ground.